Everybody thinks that this is an easy business. Not so easy. Products that have been in the line for 20 years, many of them are bestsellers on some of the e-commerce channels. If I put those in the showroom, we don't sell any. Managing inventory flow is probably the hardest thing for any business in home decor. It may be for any business.
What are some dangerous assumptions that the industry has taken or conventional wisdom which you found in your 25 years?
I've watched some companies go bankrupt looking to such exacting precision to get the design exactly the way they envisioned it that they go broke in the process. There's a fine line that we all have to tread between trend and fad. Fad is something that is going to fade out very quickly.
One thing I'm always amazed about this industry is the level of competition, like friendly competition that people have. Tell us about how competition drives your product strategy. Today, I'm excited to welcome Berk on the show. Brian has been the president of Howard Elliott Collections for the last 20 years. If you're a designer, if you're a buyer, if you've ever walked the trade show floor, you've definitely come across the amazing work Howard Elliott Collection does. What makes Brian such an interesting guest for this show is how he methodically thinks about products and go-to-market strategy. He has built very specific systems on how to launch a product line, how to price it, how to test it at market before committing to inventory. If you're running a wholesale brand and you're trying to figure out your product strategy and how to differentiate in a crowded market, Brian has a lot of practical wisdom to share. Brian, welcome to the podcast. So Brian, why don't we just start with an introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself, about the company.
I'm Brian Berk. I'm the president and owner of Howard Elliott Collection. Howard Elliott Collection is coming up on its 25th anniversary this fall. We are based out of Chicago, and we focus on home decor products, including decorative mirrors, accessories, accent furniture, and artwork. And we also do some textiles in-house. We've catered to typical furniture stores, hospitality, e-commerce fulfillment, and we work very well with designers.
And Brian, tell us how you happen to be in this industry. Like what?
Well, it's a long story, but I'll keep it very brief in that it was an accident. And when I'm an attorney by trade and was looking to start my own law firm, and one thing led to another, and my father encouraged me to take a meeting with some folks that needed a distributor out of the Midwest to sell commercial furniture. I ended up doing that, had a huge problem with all my furniture breaking, had to go figure out sources in Asia that I had never been to, and put everything back together. And as most things in this country usually happen, they happen on the golf course. A gentleman had come to me with the ideas of decorative mirrors on the golf course, and it was kind of conceived right there on the second hole of a golf course in Chicago. And 25 years later, here we are with several thousand SKUs in the line.
That's a pretty interesting story. I think when I meet people in this industry, every president, CEO has, some spikes. Some are very creative. Some are very excellent operationally. So tell us a little bit about your leadership style and where do you feel like Howard Elliott's spikes are?
So I think that my leadership style is to bring as many people into the fold as possible. That just because we did something a certain way doesn't mean that we need to do it that way. There's always new things to learn. There's always new technology. There's always new ways to think about a particular problem. And as the company has evolved and as the world has evolved, that style has helped us because we've changed processes along the way, and really have tried to evolve with the times.
Got it. And Brian, one of the things I feel like you have a very different way of looking at, or I would say a very methodical way of looking at, is how you purchase products, right? I think there is, with so many channels, I think one of the unique things about this industry is that, what sells online might not sell offline. What attracts people to a showroom might not attract them to your website. So talk talk to us a little bit about your purchasing workflows and also what the team setup looks like today.
So we have a product development team here in the U.S., and then we have sourcing teams in China and India and Vietnam. When we look at product, we do not look at it in a vacuum. We don't put it in the line just because it's pretty or just because it's a certain price. There's a whole analysis that has to take place. And at the end of the day, every single item that we put in the line has to be approved by me at the end. There are certain analytical questions I'm always going to ask of our product development teams and sourcing teams in that where does this product fit in a home or in a restaurant or in a hotel? What type of uses does it have? Does it meet the aesthetic challenges that we're looking at? Price point, packaging. There's so many things that go into the product development cycle because at the end of the day, you have to work the pricing back both forward and backwards. So you correctly stated that I am very methodical. I don't look at it as just pretty or handsome. I look at it as, does it fit a need? Does it fit an aesthetic? Does it fit a price point? Because all of those things have to be in concert in order for it to work, long term.
So Brian, if I were to create a matrix, right? So number one, there's several channels that you serve today. So you have your marketplaces within which, say, a Wayfair, Amazon, both of which also seem pretty different to me in the kind of consumers they eventually cater to. Then on the B2B side, I would say like a furniture store would probably be different than a designer. And within designers also you service both commercial as well as residential designers. So there are like 6 or 7 different channels. And then on the other, say the y-axis of this are several categories that you currently produce products in. So talk to us a little bit about like how do you decide when you're building a product? Like are you saying like, hey, this product I'm particularly making for my designer channel within that commercial channel, so hence it needs to fit a price point? Or is the approach more a single product should service as many channels as possible? Like what's more important?
In a perfect utopic world, there would be a product that would fit across everything. Try as we may, it doesn't work out very often. So it is, again, very analytic, very methodical in filling buckets of products.
Okay.
So in a decorative mirror category, I have to have contemporary, transitional, coastal. I have to have small, big, medium. So I need to focus on that, and I need to look at price points and say, okay, where's going to ring the bell? And we do research to look at like product, similar size is what we use, size matrices to figure out pricing strategies. And then we have to say, okay, what fits? And there's a lot of product we pass on because we don't feel that we can move volume of it to substantiate putting it in the line. And everything has to earn its keep, both in the warehouse and in a showroom, because those are expensive and you have to get turns from them. When you start to mix distribution channels between a e-commerce, for instance, and a retail, well, now you have packaging elements you have to be careful of. You have to be mindful of oversized packages for extra charges to cut consumers because they don't understand it. So they just see the sticker shock of it.
Yeah.
So being mindful of FedEx guidelines, UPS guidelines, so that you don't hit those thresholds is very, very important when you're doing in that product development stage. I would tell you that in the products that have been in the line for 20 years, many of them are bestsellers on some of the e-commerce channels that you previously alluded to. We don't, if I put those in the showroom, We don't sell any of them.
Hmm.
They're staples, they're commoditized, and they're price point sensitive, and there's a perceived value there. And we sell them every day. But the designer and the retailers are looking for new, fresh product that is more designer oriented, utilizing newer and fresher materials, and that becomes the trick of bringing product in that will sell over and over again, but will draw traffic in to a showroom setting, and that's where that designer retailer, depending upon the size of the retailer, kind of mirrors itself, because a retailer is going to have some type of design personnel to merchandise their stores. So what we try to do is produce product that's easily merchandisable and give merchandising inspiration in our showroom and through our collateral materials that we're working with.
Just taking a step back, so like when you start a new year, do you first start from saying what channels am I seeing the most growth in, where do I want the company to focus, and that kind of then, sends a message to the PD team like, hey.
Absolutely. When retail softens, we may go a little heavier into an e-commerce channel, because that e-commerce channel at the end of the day is as close as B2C as we get, even though we're still conducting business through the e-commerce partners and not directly to the consumer. The consumer's purchasing it, we're drop shipping it to them. So we're able to see what the consumer is actually buying. So when a buyer comes into the showroom and says, oh, our consumer won't buy that, well, now I'm questioning the validity of that statement, because I'm watching this go on in a national exposure, and certain products are selling throughout the country. They may be missing the boat on that particular lifestyle or aesthetic.
Got it. So Brian, just for the audience, how many new products are you introducing every year?
So I would say that we probably are introducing roughly 700 products a year.
Got it.
And we do it at the two high point markets in April and October. We used to split it up 4 times a year and break it down to 2 smaller introductions and 2 larger introductions. But what we found was that with people not always attending all the various markets, that we wanted to have 2 bigger introductions so they were more impactful. And just because we introduced it now, half of the population may not see it until the summer in Las Vegas because they're on the West Coast.
Got it.
So we just give it a little bit more time. And with the shift in buying habits being, there are less traditional retailers and there are more designers. Designers are working on a little bit longer timeline on a project basis. So the great design firms have multiple projects going on all the time, but the timelines vary, so you don't always get that immediate response to your product introduction. So very often I'll say to people, they ask me, how is my market? I said, I'll let you know in 30 days, because we'll see a lot more reaction after they've seen the product slotted into their portfolios and get back and finalize things.
Makes sense. So Brian, say, let's assume 700. So how would you decide what percentage of the 700 attributed to different categories essentially? Is it just based on your sales for last year? Are you looking at growth in certain categories, or what's the
I think we look at the piece itself and kind of dictate what is appropriate for the various channels. There's certain product that we'll leave off of an e-commerce channel just because it's either super fragile for a drop ship mentality, or it's very expensive, or it's very large. So we'll be very selective in offering some of those, and we always want to give designers and retailers a head start, and give them first opportunities to select products. So product we're introducing today, a large proportion of it will not see e-commerce for some time, to give retailers and designers a fair shake at it.
Got it. So, Brian, just to get to this selection of 700, like how many products are you looking at, like to get to this final shortlist?
Oh, I would say multiples of that. I can tell you in a product development meeting we had last week, I probably looked at 20 different collections and maybe chose to go forward with 5.
Got it. So when your team is coming and actively pitching you these collections, are there, like, have you set like some kind of process, like, hey, these are all the questions I need you to answer before kind of pitching it to me? What are those, just for audience?
Similar to what I had mentioned before, is where does this go in a home? Where does this go in a restaurant or a hotel or commercial area contract? What is its use? What are we going to sell it for? Can it command a retail of X or Y or Z? And working forward and backwards to the pricing to say, does this fit within our pricing parameters? Also looking and say, can this ship small parcel? Does this have to ship large parcel? Those are all questions they have to come prepared to answer. And then the design aesthetic, it has to be clear and understandable of what genre, lifestyle that we're trying to cater to. We've been weak or light in some of our coastal offerings, so we've been trying to build a coastal offering up within the line without it being too coastal looking. So to have that subtlety of this is coastal without it screaming, I have a fish on me, so I'm coastal. So we wanted that upscale, sophisticated coastal look, and so that's something that we've been focusing on a lot. We always focus on a contemporary line, and then having some more traditional pieces so that we don't get pigeonholed into any one area. We've been working with trend colors the last several markets, and not just necessarily what is Pantone's color of the year, but really diving deep into women's apparel, women's accessories, and trying to see what are the next colors that are being featured so that we can integrate into home decor some of those colors.
Got it. And Brian, I think like when you're introducing so many products, and at least last few years, things have shifted very rapidly. Like pricing has changed very rapidly due to disruptions. What is your process to sort of bring new products in or select products? Is it happening once a quarter, like, a week blocked for the entire team and we're just doing this? Or
No, we do this continuously. We're always working on product development week in, week out. To do it, I'm always afraid that if you hold off on it and there's an incident like there is right now and you're stuck and then don't have new product to launch, I don't ever want to be caught without new introductions. So we're constantly flowing. We're constantly working on drafting product development, and we're constantly sampling and building prototypes and bringing them in with our shipments. That way, we're building our library up so that when we go into our final selections, when we see it, because sometimes the idea was great, the price was great, but when you see the execution, it just didn't come out the way you wanted it to. When you design a new accent chair, I like to sit in it before we do that, because if it doesn't sit right, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it costs, doesn't matter what it looks like. If it hits you funny, if it's too firm, too hard, if it doesn't hit you in the back quite right, those are problems. And until you are there and feel it and see it, then changes can be made. So seeing the product and seeing the scale and seeing the textural elements, it's very important in that product development process.
Got it. Got it. Brian, like you've kind of perfected this process over 20 years. Tell us what you feel like people are doing differently, or where do people go wrong? Because I think last few years have really shed some light on, like, if you buy incorrectly in a market that's evolving so fast and so quickly. People have gone under, and there've been a lot of stock issues. So what are you seeing that people are not?
I think managing inventory flow is probably the hardest thing for any business in home decor. It may be for any business, but from the experiences that we have, it's having that ability to follow and try to have the correct inventory levels on a continuous basis. That's a challenge and where folks go wrong. I think buying into large minimum quantities of product can lead to disaster. I've seen a lot of folks that were in other categories get into accessories, and the accessory game's a little bit different because the quantities for some of these are fairly substantial. And so you need to be cognizant of, from a spatial standpoint and from a cost and economic standpoint, of how much inventory am I going to sit on? And then just flowing that inventory, and it's still, the fashion aspect of the business is still a not perfected science. And so you are going to be wrong from time to time, and you have to figure out a strategy to alleviate as much pain as you can and get out of the product to live to fight another day.
Got it. And has that something that has changed in how you source? Like, I think in the tech industry, we are very obsessive about this idea of A/B testing. So has that kind of something that you've implemented?
I think that the hardest thing is to forecast in today's world, because there are so many ancillary issues going on that are affecting those forecasts. So whereas you knew exactly what your winners and losers were after a high point market, it's much more challenging today. And so I think that there is some A/B testing, but unfortunately a little bit is by gut, and that gut feeling of, these are pieces that we feel strongly about in a committee agreement, as opposed to me just making a decision on my own saying, yes, we're going to buy this, or we're going to produce these. I think that having more voices in the mix helps that conversation flow a little bit better. But I think that when you create a unilateral approach of, we're going to buy these, we're not going to buy these, it can create some problems for inventory.
And Brian, apart from your team, is there, like, are you taking into account customers' voice? Like when you're deciding on your product mix, is there any part of it where you're like taking customers' opinions on it?
I always will listen to sales reps. I will always listen to customers. I feel that, again, more input is important. Sales reps are traveling to multiple customers in a geographic location, so you're getting some feedback of what they're seeing out there. I can't be everywhere.
Have you made any changes in your sourcing strategy, as in, given that this is a fashion business in some sorts, second, supply chains have been kind of there've been a lot of supply chain disruptions. Are you gravitating more towards factories that can sort of give you lower MOQ so that you can test things more easily? Have you made any shifts in
Yes.
who you partner with, essentially, for your
Yes.
supply chain.
Yes. And we vet a potential partner factory, partner manufacturer very carefully, very closely. There has to be enough product that makes it substantial to buy 2 pieces from this factory and 3 pieces from that factory doesn't. It just becomes more problematic. So yes, there needs to be the right fit, the right culture, the right chemistry in working with a partner. So I always make the analogy of you date before you get married. You crawl before you walk, and you walk before you run. So it's very important to get, and I always tell every partner, supplier, that we're going to start small and we're going to grow together. I've had manufacturers that I've been doing business with for 25 years. I've had factories that are brand new to us. But understanding their capabilities, understanding what our desired effect is, understanding that our quality levels may be higher than some others, all that has to play into our decision-making process. So yes, we're very careful in who we partner with, and yes, we are very careful in working with factories that are a little bit more cooperative with quantities so that we don't have to over purchase when we're getting started.
I think, Brian, another thing that you've been kind of I think change or working really hard at Howard Elliott is the go-to market, right? And the first time I heard that term in the wholesale space was actually from you, like just go-to market of products. It's a fairly overused term in software. Like we use that term, throw that term around a lot. But talk to us about what that go-to market entails. What are the different stages of it? And I know you've been systematically trying to increase the go-to market speed, so to say,
Increase the efficiencies and lower the cost.
Cost, yeah. So talk to us like what those stages are. And
So the way I look at go-to-market is from the time that it's conceived in product development to getting it in front of customers. And there's a lot that goes into that. And everybody that's in this industry is painfully aware of all the steps that go into it. So you start with your product development, and now you have to logistically get those samples from the factory level to the U.S. to your facility. And now it's become so much more sophisticated in what needs to be done in order to be ready to roll by the time customers first see that product. And what I mean by that is romance copy needs to be written. You're selling a story. You're selling sizzle to a design client, to a retailer. Why this product? What about it is compelling? Imagery. Imagery has become a much more robust step in the process. Before we could put a silhouette up online and put the name of the product and the SKU number and the price, and we were off to the races. Well, not anymore. And so you have to have imagery. You have to have your website, your full image tray filled out before you get to market. You need to have some video footage. You need to have line drawings. I call it the 2x4 approach. Even though you'd say in your copy that the mirror is 24 by 36, so you have to hit the customer in the head with a 2x4 to explain to that customer that what is 24 and what is 36. It's, even though you have it in the copy, you need to visually depict those dimensions. And then the last portion of the imagery is the lifestyle, environmental images. So we all used to send product down to studios and stage environmental shots, and then we had CGI, and now there's other tools out there that are very effective in helping us do that. So that's getting them ready on the e-commerce, on the website, so that you can show customers what you're doing. And now there's the live setting of getting the samples to a showroom and merchandising them, and writing the bullet points for each product, training the sales reps, and having all these tools that you can do this in a market setting, and then obviously reaffirming all your pricing strategy to make sure all your prices, getting all that information, all that data loaded in prior to market, having a new introduction catalog so that people can flip through it either digitally or print it out and look at it in person. All of that goes into what I would call that go-to-market strategy of being there. Now, that's just to get it live for High Point. There are obviously much greater detailed things that have to happen to get it on an e-commerce portal, that have to get it into certain retailers. There's a lot more that goes into specific things like that.
Brian, there's several steps you mentioned in the go-to-market process, but you've managed to keep your team pretty lean. So talk to us about what that setup is today and how have you managed to keep it so condensed?
Well, with challenging times comes challenging decisions, and so we have kept ourselves very lean, and we've adapted some outsourcing overseas to help us with some of the data work, so that the folks that are here in the U.S. are able to focus on more of the heavier lifting that needs to be done. So now that we've taken a lot of the data creation and processing out of the mix, and we've also had the ability to adapt and evolve with technology, all of those things have afforded us the opportunity of working much leaner. And I always say, just because you have more bodies doesn't mean that you are more productive. And we have found that over the last 2 years that we've streamlined this quite a bit. And I'm proud to say that we were ahead of schedule for this market with 350 introductions, and even me throwing a couple last-minute curveballs. They had everything ready to roll by the end of last week, and the new introduction book is done and being published on Wiz's our website hosted by Wiz as we speak.
Got it. And Brian, tell the audience what you've done to streamline this. Like, what technologies have you used, and how have they saved money?
So
cost?
we've gone from a traditional photo shoot with a photographer coming in and spending 3-4 days shooting all of our new introductions, and then spending a month to 6 weeks cleaning up the images and creating us files that are usable, then having to have somebody upload all of those images and categorize them into utilizing technology. Some of this is now being supplied by Wiz. We were using 3 different tools that WizStudio is going to be able to handle all 3 steps, so that condenses our processes. And then there are tools for helping us generate copy, so we're not spending quite as much time. It's a lot easier to edit, and utilize AI tools for copy generation and bullet point generation. We're able to use additional tools to take the data that we're getting from the factory level and import that into our ERP system and the Wiz database as well. I think that the these steps have really helped us in that timing, and have drastically lowered the cost. So those are some of the things we've been able to implement.
Got it. Anything on the sampling side? Any changes you made to the process there?
Yes. So the nice thing is we're able to, and thank you for bringing that up. When we are looking, we're able to have the product ready to go by the time we see it. So basically, at the factory level, we're able to take photography of the product as prior to it being packaged in its silhouettes and angles, and with the software that is available to us now through WizStudio, we're able to create those silos that are cleaned and stripped, and create our line drawings and create our environmental shots, so that by the time the samples or the production actually hits our dock, we have everything in that go-to-market strategy for the website to be fully filled out in that tray. That's a huge advantage in timing and not having to wait for product to then photograph it here, more handling. It just really creates it. And with all this photography and all the angles, we're really able to catch if there's any flaws or defects or changes that need to be made before they're shipped.
Brent, one thing I'm always amazed about this industry is the level of competition, like friendly competition that people have. Tell us about how competition drives your product strategy, or what role does it play there?
Well, I always want to know what my competitors are doing so that we can be different. So it's something that I try to keep my finger on the pulse, so that I know that we're doing things different. Everybody doesn't want to be the same, and me too, and then you're just shopping price and it's a race to the bottom. So it's very important that our styles are fresh, and that I can say with confidence that Company X is a great company, but we do it differently. So it's very important to me to keep an eye on what's going on in the industry, what's going on with our competitors, but be fresh, and they might go right and we might go left.
And Bran, you alluded to a point where you said, like, what sells in the showroom is not what sells online. How do you think about your showroom strategy in the overall product mix?
So the showroom everything has to earn its keep. And so you have your new introductions, and then you have to take some items that are bestsellers. You have to take some items that fit an aesthetic to round something out. So we may need to spatially fill something with the right look or the right finish or the right shape. And we always have to think of it as what's going to draw people into the showroom. You have to have showstoppers. You have to have oh my God, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen, to draw them in. Or you have to have a pop of color that does that for you. And you have to be courageous sometimes and, get a little out there in order to create some talk. You want some of these style spotters and designers to be talking, because as I'm sure you've noticed, when you see a bunch of people looking at a display, more people come and say, well, what are they looking at? And it's got that infectious halo effect to it. So it's very important that you have certain areas in the showroom that you can immediately point to and say, look at this. And then you want to have certain areas that are more shoppable. And, there are just certain things that are going to sell, but they don't need to be in the showroom. And they're going to sell anyway. And they're not going to stop somebody in their tracks and say, oh my God, that was cool. That really put that idea in me. Because you're wanting, I was talking about this earlier, about designers that can conceptualize, and they can see a product and they know exactly where it's going to fit. They know exactly where it's going to go. I can't do that. I wish I could. I can't do it till I see it. When I see the product, I understand it. But putting that together in one's mind is it's an art and a science, I guess. But it's a trait that not everybody has. So having that product array and mix and merchandising philosophy to get those designers' thoughts flowing is very important in our strategy.
And Brian, this also brings an interesting point. Like, I think trade shows, the role of trade shows have changed. And I've been coming to this market for, I think, over 2 years now. And
You're a newbie.
I'm still a newbie. But every market, I think there are certain people who are always happy with how the market ends and certain people who are always upset about how the market ends. And it seems like it doesn't have much to do with the overall traffic.
It's transitioned. I think that there was a time where these were self-liquidating investments. You walked out of markets with trayfuls of orders that were confirmed, ready to roll, and you knew fairly quickly your winners and you knew your losers as far as product offerings. You knew the customers were going to come in. You knew what day they were going to come in. They were creatures of habit. Now, the mix, and back then, designers were not very plentiful at the markets. They were not allowed in a lot of showrooms, specifically the more larger furniture companies, the traditional furniture companies. As time has gone on and as retailers have decreased in their presence, designers have filled that void. So learning to work with designers had to be something that you had to do in order to survive. So that required you learning to speak, write, merchandise a little differently to speak to that class of trade. The makeup of who comes to a market has changed as well. So you have less retailers. You have more designers. Designers are looking for inspiration for their projects. They're not necessarily ordering at market unless they have a specific project and a specific need on that 5 days they're here. You have e-commerce. They're not buying at market. They're looking for trends. They're looking for relationships. You have hospitality folks, again, looking for inspiration, looking for vendors, looking for supply chain. So the number of people for which you can have the order be written has decreased drastically. So you're playing in a smaller pool. So your measurements of what's a good market, and as I said earlier, sometimes these significant orders, programs, projects come 2, 3, 4 weeks after market. So that definition of how is your market has to be a little bit longer than it used to be during the week that you were actually at market and had your follow-ups. So those are things in which have changed. And because there are so many shows, people are not staying as long. Because things have gotten more expensive, people are not staying as long. So they're condensing. And specifically in High Point, they come earlier and earlier and earlier.
And Brian, so if as a company I should not be looking at total orders written or order volume right after the market to say it was successful, unsuccessful. What are you looking at after the market to say like, hey, this?
So I'm dividing it into what was a firm confirmed order, what are orders that are likely to be confirmed in the next 30 days, and what's the low-hanging fruit out there that we need to follow up on quickly. And then I go back and I look at from a product standpoint and say what sold and what didn't sell, and try to answer in my mind why something sold or why something didn't sell. Was it because where it was positioned in the showroom? Was it hidden? Was it buried on the low shelf? All of those things come into my analysis from a market. How many people did we have in the showroom? How many new people that we haven't seen before came into the showroom? What were the positive comments? What were the negative comments? Those are all things. Hey, the showroom looked great and it flowed better, and I felt like I could see the product better. It was a better experience for me this market versus last market. Or I love the event you hosted. It really was informational, or the content was really compelling. Those are all things that I want to take away. And at the end of the day, how many more people are registering on the website as a result of coming into the showroom? How many people are shopping? How many shopping carts are being filled? All those things have to go into this, because where I started to say earlier in my career, this was a self-liquidating investment. The rent cost this. We did this much in sales. It makes sense. Now you have to look at it as a marketing expense as well. You're not always going to get it all immediately. Some of it's going to take a little bit more time to percolate.
Brian, like towards the end of this conversation, I also want you to talk a little bit about what are some dangerous assumptions that the industry has taken, or conventional wisdom which you found in your 25 years, coming to 25 years, that are wrong.
Well, I think that people think that every company is run the same, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I think that there are, in my opinion, two types of thought processes that go through an owner's mind, and some of them are more design centric. I've watched some companies go bankrupt, looking with such exacting precision to get the design exactly the way they envisioned it, that they go broke in the process of getting it exacting. Where there's also a more entrepreneurial thought process of what type of categories am I trying to cater to, and asking some of the questions that I think are important to a more well-rounded product line. I also think that chasing colors and the color of the year can be run to a big problem pretty quickly. I applaud all the paint companies for their marketing efforts in having the colors, but chasing them without having a more diverse color palette is a big pitfall. And I think there's a fine line that we all have to tread between trend and fad. And a fad is something that is going to fade out very quickly, and by the time you've perfected it and brought it in and imported it, because that cycle of product development takes some time, that fad could be gone. Whereas a trend is something you can build on, and it's a building block, and it's having some fashion and then some thought put into it to make it a little bit more diverse and have a little foundation underneath it, and which gives it a longer lifeline and longer legs. I think some of those are, and everybody thinks that this is an easy business. Not so easy, and we always tease with buyers that think they can go do it themselves and import it directly or bring in product line themselves, and we certainly embrace it and say, we'll be here when you change your mind or after you've gone through that process, because it's challenging. It's not. There's nothing easy about it. If it was so easy, everybody would be doing it.
Brian, we cannot do a podcast in 2026 without talking about AI. From my vantage point, I feel like the last big revolution was internet. I think wholesalers took a while to catch on to it. Then there was cloud, and there's still a lot of companies that are running on on-prem software. Does this new technology seem different to you from the past waves? And if yes, like why so?
I think yes, and I think every iteration of technology that can save us time and make us more efficient and save us money are integral to our businesses and should be incorporated into our strategies. The Ella technology that you've incorporated with a little bit of our help in being the guinea pig and test pilot, I'm watching our customer success specialists really embrace it, and as the tool is learning, and really what that tool does is it helps us integrate orders that are emailed to us into our Wiz platform, which then goes right into our ERP platform in an integration tool. So it's really saving them minutes per order, and when they're multiple store orders, it's making it even easier. So really finding that the tool is learning, and the partnership and cooperation that we have, it's really helping us streamline the process faster. And I think that these tools of helping me conceptualize whether it's a memo I want to write and I want to get my thoughts concisely stated, to having product descriptions help me create those, to the imagery tools that are out there now. I mean, it's amazing how these tools are catalog ready when we've learned how to use the tools in the right fashion. So there's still human interaction that needs to be done. There's still supervision. There's still a lot that needs the human touch. But the time savings that these tools are affording us, and they're really not creating more work. Like when email became so rampant and texting became so rampant, it created more work and more instantaneous things. This is now starting to take some of the work off your plate, but still needs your input into it. So I understand your pain from a tech world coming into this industry, but leaders like yourself, it's important. Have that patience with us as we learn and adapt to the tech bubble. It's only going to help us. And again, give us spoonfuls, teaspoonfuls, not tablespoonfuls and serving spoonfuls, because we're a little slower than some other industries.
Well, I think, Brian, we're coming on time. I really appreciate you coming here and talking to us about your workflows. I think Howard Elliott is one company that I really look up to. And I have time and again reached out to you for leadership advice, even though our worlds are quite different, and I've always found them helpful. So I'm glad we could have you and have you share a little bit with the audience.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was a lot of fun doing this.